The winter air bit through layers of old coats and thin scarves. The bus station was alive with noise, footsteps, hurried voices, the hiss of brakes. Yet in one corner, almost drowned out by the chaos, a violin cried. It wasn't polished sound. The wood was cracked, strings old, bow frayed. Still, the melody that came from it, it stopped time if you were willing to listen. Most weren't. People passed by without a glance. Some turned their heads away. A few tossed coins, not even looking at the man playing. His fingers shook in the cold. His shoes were worn through at the soles. His face, tired, hollowed, carried the weight of years. And then she appeared, a young woman in an elegant coat, her heels clicking against the stone floor. She slowed. She didn't rush past like the others. Her eyes followed the sound, searching. And then she stood still, just feet away from him. The man lowered his gaze, embarrassed. He waited for the clink of a coin, the quick departure. But it didn't come. Instead, she stayed. She listened, and for the first time in years, he felt truly seen. What she did next was not charity. It was the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. But long before this night at the bus station, the story began elsewhere. There was a time when he stood in a warm classroom, chalk dust on his hands, violin resting proudly under his chin. His name was Daniel, and back then, his world was filled with music. Students adored him. He believed he was building a good life, a simple one, but filled with love. His wife would sit in the back of the hall sometimes, eyes shining as she watched him teach. Their daughter, Lily, just a toddler then, would clap along to every note, giggling. But life has a way of breaking even the strongest melodies. Illness came like a thief in the night. His wife's laughter faded into coughs. Her energy drained day by day. Daniel held her hand until the very end, promising he would keep their daughter safe. He did, but barely. After her passing, Daniel's classroom no longer felt like home. The music was still there, but the light had gone. He missed classes. Bills piled up. Parents whispered. Soon, the school had to let him go. With no steady job, Daniel turned to the only thing he had left, his violin. That old instrument became his lifeline. He played on street corners and subway tunnels and at bus stations. The world paid him in coins, sometimes in pity, sometimes not at all. And every night, he came home to Lily, who would run to him with open arms. Did you play my song today, Daddy? She'd ask, her big brown eyes filled with hope. Daniel always nodded, even when his fingers were raw and his pockets were nearly empty. Always, he whispered. Always for you. Their apartment was small, the heat unreliable in winter, but Lily's smile warmed it. She'd wait by the window, drawing pictures of him holding a violin, dreaming of better days. She was proud of him, though she could see the worry hiding in his tired eyes. And he was proud of her for believing, even when he no longer believed in himself. But far across the city, in another kind of world, lived Claire. Her life looked perfect from the outside. Mansions, black cars waiting at the curb, glittering parties. Her family owned companies, hotels, and more than one estate. She had been raised in a world of polished silver and silent rules. But for all its shine, her life felt empty. Her parents spoke often of profit margins, deals, and shareholders, rarely of feelings. Compassion, to them, was weakness. They believed strength was measured in numbers on a page. But Claire remembered a different kind of strength. She remembered her grandmother. Her grandmother's hands were soft but firm on the piano keys. She taught Claire the language of music before she could even read properly. To play, to listen, to feel. Those were her grandmother's lessons. In those hours together, Claire's heart came alive. But when her grandmother passed, the piano lid closed, and with it, that part of Claire's world. Her parents scoffed whenever she spoke of music. A distraction, her father called it. A waste of time, her mother said. So Claire tucked that part of herself away. She smiled at parties, wore the dresses picked out for her, and walked hallways filled with luxury yet absent of warmth. Still, every so often when she was alone, she would sit by the old piano in the corner of her room, letting her fingers trace the keys, playing notes no one else was meant to hear. Notes that carried her grandmother's memory. Notes that reminded her that somewhere there was still a part of her that belonged to music. 2 lives, one marked by loss and poverty, clinging to survival, the other marked by wealth and emptiness, clinging to memories. Neither knew the other existed. And yet, life has a way of weaving invisible strings between souls. One night, on the cold floor of a crowded bus station, those strings would pull tight. A weary father with cracked violin, a restless heiress with a hidden song in her heart. Their worlds, so far apart, were already moving toward collision. And when they finally met, everything would change. And then, on that winter night, the silence between 2 strangers broke. Claire stood there, her eyes fixed on Daniel's trembling hands as he played. The crowd flowed around them, but for her, the world had gone still. Finally, she spoke. "What song is that?" Daniel froze. The bow slipped slightly on the strings. For years, people had passed him by, dropping coins without even looking. No one had asked. No one had cared. He looked up slowly, unsure if she was mocking him. It's a lullaby," he said, his voice rough from cold air and long silence. "I wrote it for my daughter." Claire's breath caught. Something about the words struck deep. A father, alone, holding on to love through music. She glanced down at the battered violin, then back at his tired eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Daniel lowered his gaze again, embarrassed. "It's all I have left to give her." For a long moment, she just stood there. Her heart, usually locked behind walls of wealth and duty, felt strangely unguarded. Then she reached into her coat, not for coins, but for a small white card. She placed it gently into his case. "Come tomorrow," she said softly. "Bring your violin." Before he could answer, she turned and walked away, her heels echoing through the station until the sound vanished into the night. Daniel stared at the card, his hands shaking. A name, an address, a world far from his own. Was this kindness or something else entirely? For the first time in years, Daniel felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not shame, hope. The night after the bus station felt different. The card lay on the table like a secret, like a doorway Daniel wasn't sure he wanted to open. He stared at it long after Lily had gone to bed. Her crayon drawings were scattered across the table, pictures of him with a violin in his hands, her smile always bright beside him. The little white card seemed out of place among them. Too clean, too sharp, belonging to a world he did not trust. Could it be a scam? Could it be some cruel joke? He had been let down too many times before. People with wealth rarely noticed people like him, and when they did, it was seldom with kindness. That night, he almost threw the card away. But then Lily shuffled out of her room, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why aren't you sleeping?" He forced a smile. "Just thinking, sweetheart." She saw the card. Her little hand picked it up, eyes wide with curiosity. "Is this from the lady at the station?" Daniel nodded. "What does it say?" "An address," he murmured. She wants me to come tomorrow, with the violin." Lily's face lit up like a candle in the dark. "Then you have to go, Daddy. Maybe it's something good. Maybe it's a miracle." He wanted to protect her from disappointment, but how could he crush hope when it was all she had? He tucked her back into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "For you, I'll go." The next morning, Daniel found himself standing before tall iron gates. Behind them stretched a grand estate, windows shining, marble steps sweeping upward like something from another life. His heart pounded. He felt small in his threadbare coat, clutching the old violin case to his chest. A guard eyed him suspiciously, but checked the card and, reluctantly, opened the gates. Daniel's footsteps echoed on the stone path as he approached the entrance. When the doors opened, Claire was waiting. Her elegance seemed even sharper in the daylight, but her eyes softened when she saw him. "You came," she said. Daniel shifted uneasily. "I almost didn't." She smiled faintly. "I'm glad you did. Come in." Inside, the hall was filled with paintings, chandeliers, and the faint scent of polished wood. But what caught Daniel's eyes were the instruments, pianos, cellos, violins, all gleaming under the light. "This place," Claire explained, "is part of a foundation I run. We sponsor young artists, help musicians find a stage. Daniel's throat tightened. Why me? I'm no one. Just a man playing for coins. Claire tilted her head. You're not no one. I heard you, and I believe the world needs to hear you too. In a practice room, she asked him to play. His hands shook as he lifted the violin. The bow scraped awkwardly at first, his nerves betraying him. But then he closed his eyes and the lullaby poured out, soft, aching, filled with love for his daughter. When he finished, there was silence. Claire's eyes glistened. You should play at the gala, she said firmly. Daniel nearly dropped the violin. The gala? A charity event this weekend. Musicians from all over the city. Donors, critics, the press. It's the perfect place. Daniel's heart sank. I don't belong there. Look at me. Look at this violin. He touched the cracked wood, ashamed. Claire stepped closer. It's not the violin they'll remember. It's you. But as he left that day, the doubts clawed at him. At home, he practiced until his fingers burned. The strings groaned under the pressure. Notes slipped, bow jittered. Some nights he threw the bow down in frustration. I can't do this, he muttered, pacing the room. Lily would run to him, picking up the bow, placing it back in his hands. You can, Daddy. You have to. He would look into her eyes, her mother's eyes, and try again. Days bled into nights. He played the lullaby over and over, shaping it, sharpening it, until every note carried his soul. When the night of the gala arrived, Daniel's chest was a storm. The hall was vast, filled with glittering gowns, polished shoes, laughter that felt cold. Crystal glasses clinked. People whispered behind fans and glasses when they saw him. The ragged coat, the old violin. Who invited him? Someone murmured. A street player? Another sneered. Daniel felt their eyes like knives. His knees nearly gave way. But then he saw Claire, standing firm at the edge of the stage. She gave him a small nod, her eyes steady, as if to say, you belong here. He thought of Lily, waiting at home, probably pressed against a radio they had borrowed from a neighbor, hoping to hear her father's name. He stepped onto the stage. The whispers grew louder. The lights were blinding. Daniel lifted the violin. His hands trembled, but then he took a breath. The bow touched the strings. The first note sang out, and for a moment, all the whispers fell silent. He played as if his life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Every sorrow, every night spent shivering in the cold, every smile of his daughter, every promise to his late wife, all of it poured into the music. But as the final notes lingered in the air, Daniel lowered the bow slowly, unsure what awaited him. Would they laugh? Would they clap? Or would silence crush him once more? The hall was still, and then, from somewhere in the crowd, hands began to clap. One, then two, then many. A wave of applause rose, uncertain at first, then swelling into thunder. Claire stood, her hands together, eyes wet. She was the first to believe in him, and now others followed. Daniel bowed his head, heart pounding. He had crossed a bridge he never thought he could. But deep inside, fear still lingered. Would this fragile moment last, or would the world soon remind him of where he came from? The night was not finished, and neither was his story. The moment had come. Daniel stood in the wings of the grand hall, violin in his hands. The light from the stage spilled across the floor, golden and sharp. His heart hammered, so loud he thought the audience might hear it. The announcer's voice echoed, "Please welcome Daniel Miller." Applause was polite, scattered. Curious eyes turned, some skeptical, some dismissive. Daniel stepped forward, each foot heavy as stone. He could feel the whispers ripple through the crowd. A street performer? Look at that violin, it's falling apart. He tried not to listen, but the words cut deep. His palms were sweating against the wood. The bow trembled between his fingers. For a breathless moment, he considered walking off the stage. But then he saw her, Claire, sitting in the front row, eyes steady, silently telling him, "You belong here." And in his mind, another image appeared. Lily, waiting at home, probably curled up beside the radio, praying to hear her father's name spoken with pride. He took a deep breath. lifted the violin, closed his eyes, and the first note rose. It was the lullaby, the same fragile tune he had played on freezing nights for strangers rushing past. But here, under the grand lights, it carried differently, soft at first, a whisper of love in every note. His bow found the strings with tenderness, then with strength, and with every note, the world around him shifted. In his mind's eye, he saw his late wife, smiling in the back of the classroom, sunlight on her face. He saw Lily clapping her tiny hands as a toddler, laughing. He saw nights when he counted coins under a dim light, tears hidden from his daughter. The music held all of it, the grief, the struggle, the endless love. The audience leaned in. Their earlier whispers faded. The hall grew quiet, not out of judgment this time, but out of awe. Daniel's hands no longer trembled. The bow moved with purpose, every note a confession. Every rise and fall of the melody carried a piece of his soul. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. A man leaned forward, captivated. Even the critics, arms folded tightly at first, slowly relaxed as the music broke through their defenses. And Claire's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't just hearing music. She was hearing truth. Proof that kindness was never wasted. The song swelled to its end. The last notes lingered, trembling the air like fragile glass. Daniel lowered the bow. Silence fell across the hall. For a heartbeat, he feared the worst, that they would laugh or worse, remain unmoved. But then it came, a single clap, then another, and suddenly thunder. The hall erupted in applause, people rising to their feet. Some cheered, some wept openly. The sound was deafening. Daniel's chest tightened. His knees nearly gave way. For years, the world had looked past him, and now they stood for him. His eyes burned with tears, but he bowed deeply, whispering to himself, "For you, Lily, for you." When he looked up, Claire was already walking toward the stage. She carried something in her hands, a violin case, polished, gleaming with age but carefully restored. She climbed the steps, ignoring the stairs, and stopped in front of him. Her voice was low, but carried through the hall. "This violin belonged to my grandmother," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "She was the one who taught me that music matters more than pride, more than wealth. I've kept it locked away until now." She opened the case, revealing the instrument inside. It's what glowed under the lights, strings shining, every curve perfect. "This should be played," she whispered, not kept silent. Daniel's breath caught. His hands hovered, afraid to touch something so fine. I can't. I'm not worthy." Claire shook her head gently. "You already proved you are." The hall erupted in applause once more as she placed a violin in his hands. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel like a man scraping for coins. He felt like what he was always meant to be, a musician, a father, a man whose song had been heard. And yet, as he held the gift, he knew this night was not just about him. It was about the daughter who believed when he didn't. It was about a woman who stopped to listen when no one else did. It was about a melody that carried broken hearts into light. Because sometimes all it takes is one song to change everything. In the days after the gala, everything began to change. Daniel no longer played for loose coins in the cold. Invitations arrived. Schools asking to teach again. Community halls offering him a place to perform. Parents wanted their children to learn from a man whose music carried more than skill, it carried truth. For Lily, life felt brighter. She had lunches packed with care, shoes without holes, and a father who stood taller now, not because he had more, but because he finally believed he was enough. And Claire? She too was transformed. For years she felt like a prisoner in her own wealth, chained by her family's vision of power. But standing beside Daniel on that stage, she realized her grandmother's legacy lived through her. She poured her energy into the foundation, opening doors for talents the world would otherwise overlook. For the first time, her wealth wasn't a cage, it was a key. One quiet evening, Daniel returned home and tucked Lily into bed. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Daddy, you're famous now." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart, I'm just your dad. And that's enough." The narrator's voice lingers. One act of kindness at a bus station lit a path neither expected. A single melody stitched together two broken worlds, and reminded us all that music, like kindness, asks for nothing, yet gives everything.